麗なとこだよね、お父さん。
山の上だ。
そうそうそう。
山の
そうそう。あまりスピードも出せないしね。これは
道がくねってるから。山道だから。
Basically double down on the course that it's been on, which happens to be Xi Jinping's course. So control, security, self-sufficiency, things like that. He'll continue the course on that.
Yeah, speaking of the West, I know many people in the United States and Western countries were wondering what Xi Jinping may say about relations around the world. What did we hear?
Well, he did not mention really any other countries by name. He didn't mention the U.S. It sort of loomed large, though. Now, there is this deepening sense in China that the United States is bent on thwarting its development. It's a narrative that Xi Jinping and the party have fostered. He mentioned Taiwan and got actually his biggest round of applause of the day for that. He said peaceful reunification with Taiwan was preferable, but that China could never renounce the option to use force because of, quote-unquote, interference from outside forces.
So, Xi reportedly poised now for a third term as party chief. I suppose we'll find out at the end of the Congress, at the end of the week. How significant is a third term for President Xi?
Policy-wise, Xi Jinping is likely to emerge from this Congress stronger. He's already the strongest leader since Mao Zedong. Xi Jinping thinks that China needs a strong man to stay together, to avoid the Soviet Union's fate of dissolving and breaking apart. That's how he's ruled, right? He's doubling down on technology-enabled surveillance and control of society. He's cracked down on dissent. He's built up this sense of nationalism and almost a siege mentality, and, has been pushing hard for self-sufficiency.
Yeah, John, considering what you just said, I'm curious what it is like in Beijing these days. I understand there's a lot of extra security, willing and able to crack down on any dissent whatsoever.
Yes, around events like this, the security is always ramped up. There are police on most street corners these days. I went to the opening session of the Congress on Sunday, and the area around this giant meeting hall in central Beijing where it was happening was sealed off and absolutely crawling with police and paramilitary soldiers and plainclothes officers of some kind. It's kind of funny, near the NPR office, which is in this sort of bustling commercial part of town with embassies and, other offices and restaurants and bars and stuff, elderly volunteers from the neighborhood are stationed about every 50 feet or so along the road for quite a long stretch. And in the words of one of them, their job is to make sure that, quote unquote, there are no incidents, whatever that could mean. In terms of incidents, there was one 3 days before the Congress in a totally different part of town when someone hung protest banners on a road overpass, complaining about the very restrictive COVID policies that are hurting China's economy, calling for democracy and for Xi Jinping's ouster. It's a very rare display of social disobedience here, and it was scrubbed pretty quickly from the Chinese internet.
That's NPR's John Ruich reporting from Beijing. John, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Well, in the U.S., more than half of all states are experiencing severe to exceptional drought. As reservoirs continue to reach record low levels and dry conditions worsen, conservation alone likely won't address this issue. California could lose 10% of its water supply within 20 years, according to state data. That's why Southern California cities are investing in reusing more water, even for drinking. Erin Stone with member station KPCC reports.
Most of Southern California's drinking water is piped hundreds of miles from the Colorado River and reservoirs in the northern part of the state. In good years, they're filled by snowmelt and rain. But after the driest winter ever recorded, those reservoirs are critically low, which is why millions of Californians are under outdoor watering restrictions. 65% of the snowmelt so many rely on could be lost by the end of the century if we don't cut greenhouse gas emissions enough to stem the climate crisis. Dan McCurry is an engineering professor at USC. He says that's why cities need to stretch other water supplies, including the water that goes down our drains and is flushed down the toilet.
I imagine wastewater recycling is providing kind of a steady, constant baseline supply of water.
For decades, California has recycled it to irrigate medians, parks, golf courses, and other green spaces. Recycling wastewater for drinking has been tougher to swallow. The world's largest facility that recycles wastewater for drinking isn't in Israel or Saudi Arabia. It's at the Orange County Water District in Southern California. In a large warehouse with rows of cylindrical contraptions stacked on top of each other, Mehul Patel, the operations director, says the wastewater goes through 3 main treatments before it's ready for drinking.
So this is the heart of the treatment. This is the reverse osmosis.
Reverse osmosis is basically like a super advanced coffee filter. Patel says the water is squeezed through a membrane to filter microscopic contaminants.
This gets the water to a level where it's almost distilled quality.
The water is so pure, Patel says they actually have to add minerals back in. Then it goes through one more treatment before it's injected into a huge groundwater basin that spans the north and central parts of Orange County. There, it mixes with other drinking water sources and eventually spills once again from faucets, providing potable water for nearly 1 million people. Some 100 million gallons of water is recycled for drinking every day. Patel says these efforts are essential in the face of a drier future.
All hope's not lost by any means, and taking advantage of technology and science, we can solve a lot of problems.
Still, only about 9% of California's total water supply is recycled. Even less of that is treated to be drinkable. Efforts to recycle more wastewater started over 20 years ago in Los Angeles, but political rhetoric and business interests got in the way. The infamous phrase, toilet to tap, was coined and sparked massive public resistance. As a result, wastewater recycling projects didn't get funded. But USC professor Dan McCurry says the worsening drought and a growing population is once again forcing many to see wastewater as a resource.
Our main water supply right now, which is imported, is only going down, if anything.
Currently, LA dumps about 230 million gallons of non-drinkable but highly treated wastewater into the ocean every day. The city plans to treat all that wasted water to drinkable standards by 2035. That would provide 40% of LA's water needs, essentially replacing the amount the city imports from Northern California and the Colorado River. And it's not just LA. California cities, large and small, are investing more in recycling wastewater as traditional water supplies dry up. Back at Orange County's water recycling plant, Mehul Patel brings me to a steel sink. He turns on the faucet and pours me a cup.
This water that we're drinking today, probably about 30 hours ago, was raw sewage coming through the sewer collection system.
I have to admit, I hesitate before putting the cup to my lips.
Don't be biased by its origin. Think of it where it is now.
I slowly take a sip, and it tastes so good, it gives me hope for California's water future. For Here and Now, I'm Erin Stone.
And you're listening to Here and Now.
KJZZ is supported by Education Forward Arizona. At edvotersarizona.org, you can hear Arizona candidates' views on education issues facing our state and how they plan to help students succeed. Learn more at edvotersarizona.org.
Good morning. This is the KJZZ New Member Drive, and you, along with other members, provide the most important and reliable source of funds that pay for the high-quality programs like Here and Now that you expect at KJZZ. Won't you please join in the process of keeping fact-based journalism strong with a sustaining membership before time runs out? We are in the next to the last day of this New Member Drive. It only takes a couple of minutes to give online at kjzz.org, or you can also call and make your gift of support at 888-774-9150. I'm Tom Maxidon in studio now with Michelle Morisco.
You feel connected to your community when you listen to KJZZ because you hear from local musicians and artists. You'll feel even more connected to your community when you drink some coffee from the Roastery of Cave Creek. We'll send you a bag of their organic coffee as a special thank you when you become a new monthly sustaining member at kjzz.org or by calling 888-774-9150.
And support in-depth reporting, in-depth feature reporting with rich sound like you just heard in that wonderful long story there. And, that's the type of reporting that you expect, you know, that sound that takes you inside an actual facility, and just, you know, the discussion about the future of water. Well, the future of public radio is largely dependent upon you. 61% of our annual budget comes from the support of folks who have decided to become sustaining members. And, you know, maybe $15 a month is the right amount for your budget. Maybe it's $25 a month. Whatever is in your budget is the right amount. You can go online right now to kjzz.org and make that gift of support. Mario in Gilbert says KJZZ is a breath of fresh air because KJZZ does an excellent job of remaining centered in the way information is conveyed. Thank you so much, Mario. We are waiting to hear from other folks who have not yet made that gift of support. Go online now to do it, kjzz.org.
KJZZ is supported by Habitat for Humanity Central Arizona. When you support Habitat for Humanity, you're giving a hand up to Arizona's seniors, veterans, and single moms in need of affordable housing. More at habitatcaz.org.
Doorbell cameras are watching delivery drivers on the job. From American Public Media, this is Marketplace Tech. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino.
Marketplace Tech is supported by Ningio, cybersecurity awareness training designed to build a culture of cybersecurity. 3-minute episodes and more that teach employees to be unhackable. Ningio.com. And by Amazon Business, your partner for smart business buying. Learn more at amazonbusiness.com.
They seem to be everywhere now. Smart doorbells like Amazon's Ring, catching porch pirates in the act, revealing nocturnal animal hijinks, and constantly monitoring delivery drivers who essentially work on our doorsteps. A new report from the nonprofit research group Data and Society explores how this doorbell surveillance is
And what's fascinating about that was we began to listen to her reading the excerpts from this book. She says, this is the name of the book, and the book is called This Book is Gay. And then it was like chapter 9, page 201. This is where I'm reading from, and it was about 2 boys and sexual contact. And she began reading from this chapter of the book, and we looked at each other, and I said, oh, we can't play any of that on the air. Now, this is 99.9% of adults that listen to this show, unless you got a kid with you, and then they're kind of forced to listen to the show. And I appreciate you making your kids listen. But we could not play 1 minute. We couldn't play 10 seconds of the excerpts from that book. It was so sexually explicit. 7th grade classroom. There was a video last week of a mother in San Diego because they had a family-friendly drag show, and she lost her mind. Alabama middle school teacher doubles as a drag queen in free time, tells children everybody loves a big bone. Cracked a sexually suggestive, in drag, sexually suggestive, and it wouldn't